Okay, Brent Vaughan here from Multihull Central. Welcome everyone who's joined us for today's webinar. I believe I've got Sedron on the line there too. Sedron, are you there?
G'day Brent, yep, we're online.
Excellent, excellent, great. All right, well again, thank you for those who are attending the webinar about charter boat investment today, and in specific to the program that Whitsunday Yacht are offering on a number of boats currently that we're going to dig into a little bit more detail. Just a little bit about our background first. So Multihull Central, myself, I've got about 20 years experience selling charter boats into the charter industry, whether it's the Whitsundays or Sydney or other parts around Australia. And we've seen lots of very successful outcomes from this, and I'm a big advocate of charter boat investment, and I'm going to explain why in a little while. 40% of the boats that we sell currently are charter boats because there is a very strong demand across the board around the country for this opportunity. And we represent a number of brands. Seawind is one of our main brands. I spent about 13 years at the factory at Seawind, which is an Australian-owned company with Australian management building boats now in Vietnam. Aquila is a power cut specialist company, the largest power cut builders in the world. And we've also had a lot of success with those boats in recent years, as we had with other brands such as Ultramare, Corsair, Privilege and Tachycat, which are not as popular for charter, but fantastic boats all the same. And I'd like to introduce Sedron from Whitsunday Yacht. And Sedron, this is probably an ideal time, maybe just to give us a little bit of background about Whitsunday Yacht in terms of the history and the operation's been up there for quite a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Whitsunday Yacht is the oldest charter business in the Whitsunday region, and Trinity Marine is the parent company, or is the owner of the brand Whitsunday Yacht. And Trinity Marine Group, as an operation, actually owns and operates Whitsunday Yacht, operates the Sunsail Whitsundays fleet. We also, as an adjunct to our business, also run Shute Harbour Slipway. So we own and operate a slipway, which is part of our facilities at Shute Harbour. And we've got another business we call Red Yacht Holidays, which is sort of a brokerage for holidays inbound and outbound from Australia. So as far as the business is concerned, we've got our own private dedicated charter facilities here in the Shute Harbour region, which consists of private jetty, floating dock facilities, operations, modern offices and customer service area, briefing rooms, administration, sales and reservations, easy parking, and as I said, a slipway, which essentially does about 60% of charter cats in the area. So we do handle a lot of most of the catamarans, sailing catamarans and power catamarans that are in the region that are working with other charter businesses. So we're pretty au fait with what's going on with the competition, and also we've got the opportunity of working on their boats as well as our own. So we'd like to see ourselves as essentially as a one-stop shop operation. I was appointed general manager of the operations 7 years ago. I'm actually the managing director of Whitsunday Yacht, and I'm the group general manager of these brands, which I've just mentioned. So, as I said, Ray is the oldest charter business in the Whitsundays and has been operating for over 30 years. Trinity Marine merged the business back in 1999 with a business called Australian Bareboat Charters, which was also a very old historic charter business that some people referred it to as ABC. And because of the dominance of Whitsunday Yacht, we actually dropped the brand, or dropped the name, and just operated through Whitsunday Yacht. In 2015, Trinity Marine took over the Sunsail business here in the Whitsundays under a franchise management arrangement. And Sunsail Whitsundays, or Sunsail, many of you may have heard of, is part of the largest global sailing network operating through 30 bases around the world in exotic locations like the Caribbean, Tahiti, Phuket, Tonga, BVI's in the Mediterranean. So back in 1999, there was about a dozen shareholders part of the Trinity Marine Group, and now there's 3. So we've distilled that right down. So that makes it certainly a lot more manageable board of directors that we've got as a consequence. So that sort of gives you a brief rundown.
Yeah, no, that's great, Sedron. Thanks for that. I've just got a little slide here showing Raniott's location, beach, and probably more importantly in relation to the islands out there. So obviously just around the corner from Airlie Beach, it'd be about a 5-10 minute drive from the main township there. And but interestingly, I hadn't sort of noticed this before, but it's a bit closer to the islands, South Mole, Hamilton Island, and Syd Harbour, which are the common first ports. And the bay itself there is where a lot of the boats are housed on swing moorings most of the year round.
Most of the year round, we've got our facility, our boats on swing moorings, as you say, and that's correct. And we have been operating very successfully in that fashion. But we've liked to think that because of our location, we are able to give our charterers and our boat owners, closer proximity to the island, as you mentioned, South Mole and Daydream and so on. So we think we've got a competitive advantage over the opposition, where they had to take at least another 2 hours before they get there and 2 hours to travel back. So we like to think that we are in the best position to maximise your stay in the Whitsundays. So we say to our charterers and certainly our boat owners that the islands are really our backyard. We're right there. I mean, I'm looking out at islands at the moment, so it's a great location. You can't beat it, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's quite idyllic down there, and you mentioned the slipway, which it is a pretty unique setup there to be able to pull out cats on the trolleys there at pretty short notice, I imagine. We extol that as a bit of a benefit of being associated with the Trinity Marine Group, because all our boat owners can be assured that we're going to be making sure that we look after our fleet first and foremost. I mean, if anything does come up, heaven above, that does happen, from time to time. If there is some issue, we can throw the boat up on our slipway very, very quickly and get to the heart of the problem, and we don't, because we manage the slipway, we can actually, do it after hours or do it, in the quickest possible fashion, which means that there's some peace of mind associated with any issue that may arise from time to time. Yeah, and in terms of during the cyclone season, if a cyclone's known, what is the policy, or what do you do with the boats in that situation?
The policy has changed ever since Cyclone Debbie. We used to actually give all our boat owners an option to either remain in Shute Harbour on a swing mooring, and of course it was insured, albeit the excess was more than putting it in a marina, but that is something that we used to give our boat owners an option. We don't give our boat owners that option anymore. Our policy going forward from Cyclone Debbie is, and certainly that's what happened just with the recent cyclone, we had all our boats split between the two marinas, Able Point Marina and Hamilton Island Marina. So what we try to do is spread the risk between those two marinas, and as a result of a named cyclone, our boats are all heading into those marinas fairly swiftly.
And do you have any issues getting into those marinas?
Well, we've got a standing arrangement with Hamilton Island and also Able Point Marina. We block a number of berths, obviously to cover the entire fleet between those two facilities. So we've already made the booking at the start of the cyclone season, so we don't actually have any troubles getting the boats in.
Right. And I guess the advantage, of course, during all the other times of the year is that you don't have the expense of a marina pen to pass on to the owners.
Yeah. Look, there's no doubt about the cost of running a marina. I mean, one way or another, they've got to recoup their expenses and their losses, you might say. And whereas a mooring is obviously a cheaper option, and there's no reason, for a boat to be sitting in a marina just chilling your head off in expenses when they could actually be sitting on the mooring. And so, as a consequence, that cost of of accommodation, you might say, is reduced substantially.
Yeah. Well, I just know here in Sydney as well, we have our own marina here, of course, and a boat like that would probably cost about 20 grand for a year to go in a marina pen versus, minimal charge.
Depending on which contract you might be operating under, because as you're probably aware, we operate both under a variable contract and a fixed return contract. The fixed return contracts, they don't get charged anything because that's all wrapped up in the deal. The variable contracts, they might be paying say between $500 and say $650 a month. So even there's considerable savings. I know at Hamilton Island you change. There's not much change out of $1,000 a month.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that fixed return issue in a little bit. So I'll just get on to, I guess, why charter boats are, I guess, a popular means of boat ownership, and certainly from my experience that we've had thrives coming through over the years. But for me, we do many boat shows each year, and you see a lot of customers coming back year after year trying to bring it all together and invest a pretty expensive piece of to get out there on the water, and it's a great lifestyle change. But gee, there's a lot of stars that have to align to make that work. So from my perspective, I think charter boat ownership really helps convert people from just looking and dreaming to actually getting on the water. And albeit you're not, using the boat 100% of the time, but at least you're out there on the water and learning and making an adjustment. I think a great case study is that of Craig Margetts and his family, who put a Seawind 1160 into charter for a good number of years in the Airlie Beach, in the Whitsundays, and his family got used to the boats and got trained up and got quite experienced over the years, and eventually did a circumnavigation of Australia after the boat came out of the charter fleet. And they spent a full 12-month sabbatical doing that, and Craig speaks very fondly of his time of the boat in the Whitsundays, and even mentions that the boat was, in some respects, better maintained back then than what it is on the end of his jetty. But I won't speak when he's not here to defend himself. But I think that's a really good example of taking a plunge, getting a return to help justify it, and skilling up, doing an extraordinary trip. As a bit of I guess, putting into context where we are at the moment at this point in time in relation to things that have happened over the last 10 years in the charter industry, particularly in relation to the GFC, which filtered out a lot of charter boats. I think there was up to about 240 boats in the peak of the operation up there. There's probably 100 boats less than that currently operating now. It was a difficult time, no doubt, Sedron, during the GFC. tourism in Australia was pretty tough work back then.
Well, the area has taken a bit of a hammering, yeah, as a consequence of the GFC. So, yeah, like we're all bearing the brunt of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but from what I'm seeing now, that certainly in relation to the Australian dollar turning around, it was up over parity there a number of years ago, made tourism overseas and charter holidays overseas very cheap and attractive to Australians, made the Australian products very expensive. Now that we're down to sort of that mid-70 mark of the exchange rates, Australian tourism seems to be on the up and up again. Is that fair to say?
It certainly is fair to say. I mean, even despite the fact that we've had a couple of cyclones in recent years and scared a lot of people away at that time, we're seeing all our boats booked out at this time, and so we're reasonably confident going forward that we've got some more blue sky ahead of us. So we're finding also a lot more interest in putting boats into fleet. So I think, generally speaking, the whole domestic market is more receptive to returning to the Whitsundays as a viable location, for a holiday, a half-decent holiday by comparison to overseas.
Yeah, and I think, obviously the Caribbean took a real hit with a massive hurricane over there recently, and the European destinations have had their woes in recent years with, all sorts of security issues and whatnot. So Australia seems to be very much on the very popular destination again, and that's across the board. This little graph here was just a graph taken of from the ABS stats, showing a very strong upward trend of short-term arrivals and departures into Australia, which seems to be growing year after year at the moment, and that's across the board in tourism generally. But when it comes to boat ownership, tourism aside, I think that the real critical thing to consider between buying a boat privately, even if it's a second-hand boat, and buying a boat commercially, that's a charter vessel that has an income. As you can see here in this graph, a red boat that's accumulating expenses year on year versus a boat that's accumulating profits year on year over a period of time has a very contrasting difference in your net position on the boat. If we're talking purely numbers, and you're analysing what the boat has cost you after a period of time. And this is before we even get into depreciation. When you look at depreciation, this is another big advantage of charter boat ownership, partly because, it is an asset of a business, and it needs to be a viable and legitimate business. But if it is, you do have the benefits of depreciating the boat. Now we can see in the blue line there, that's sort of a natural path that certainly the sea winds generally take with their market decline in value. So say around the 5-6 year mark there, about 70% resale on the original purchase price. And the red line shows how you can depreciate the boat using negative gearing. So you can write the boat down significantly more so than the actual market decline in value. You may not want to write it down that much. You may want to keep it closer to the actual market decline in value, because if you do choose to sell at some stage, there will be a capital gain or a clawback, they call it. That's an interesting point to consider. See boat owners converting their older charter boats after about 5 or 6 years into new charter boats and warehousing some of that written down value into the new boat, and over a period of time, getting larger and larger boats. And we've got a number of charter boat owners who have had 3 or 4 boats over the course of a few years, and that's been a really positive way of them, not only running a very viable business, but also getting their dream boat over the course of 10 or 15 years. So, and what I've got here is just a graph that one of our accountants have done showing return on your written down value. Now, this is on a variable proposition as opposed to a fixed proposition, which would be stronger than this again. But obviously, as the written down value of the boat is getting smaller and smaller, your actual return on that written down value is getting stronger and stronger over the course of 5 or 10 years. So 8% return now, certainly stronger in a number of years. So how do charter boats work? Sedron, maybe you can take us through, the actual mechanics of, not necessarily, we'll come back to the 8% shortly, but, as an investor leaving a boat with you, take us through that scenario. I mean, what does that mean in terms of personal use? And they still own full ownership of the boat, don't they?
Yeah. Look, as far as charter, putting a boat in charter, one would expect that it's going to be kitted up to meet charter requirements. Obviously, we've got certain standards that need to be adhered to. That would include the electronics, charter plotter, autopilots, cruising gear, and it would have to be commissioned, would have to be put into survey, so there's those considerations. So we're assuming that a surveyor's looked at these things. I mean, we can arrange that just as most of the charter companies up here do that on behalf of the potential boat owners that would like to put the boat in the fleet. And once that's been done by an accredited surveyor, well, then we can put it into commercial registration under, say, Class 4C or 4D up here, which is partially smooth waters. And then as far as the program is concerned, we would market and facilitate the sale of the boat on a charter basis, usually on behalf of the boat owner. And in that particular case, the revenue that would be accrued would be divided up, of course, between the expenses that would be associated with the boat, the boat owner's return, and also our commission for handling the investment for and on behalf of the boat owner. So depending which way you're going, and I know that we're talking about fixed returns, we actually take most of the risk on. We're looking at maintaining the vessel on behalf of the boat owner, and they consequently don't have any other additional expenses other than the registration of the vessel. Following putting the vessel into charter, this is a great arrangement in as much as they don't have to worry about, if something breaks or something needs to be replaced or something like that through charter negligence or mishap or maybe even if it come to grief for whatever reason. We cover those things obviously by way of insurance or just through the normal wear and tear process that goes on with each vessel. The good thing about the boat owner is concerned they see a cheque going into their account, their bank account every month at a fixed rate for a determined period. That could be up to 5 years for a brand new vessel. So what that does is it gives the boat owner peace of mind. Certainly seems to strike a chord with accountants and with the banks because they like to see some sort of certainty, and that's the thing that we're really starting to see more and more of. You find that under a variable contract, there's too many variables associated with the charter business because of the seasonal nature of the business. We take that certainty out and we're giving the boat owner a guaranteed fixed return on a monthly basis, rain, hail or shine.
All right, well, let's dig into the fixed return then, and we might it works for us. So on that base, now the 8% is based on a 3-cabin vessel, and there's a 9% offered on a 4-cabin vessel. So regardless of the season, regardless of how strong the industry is at the time, they have a guaranteed check in their bank account each month.
That's correct. As I said, I mean, we were finding a lot of boat owners just not really receptive to the idea of sort of projections that could change, you know, their own personal financial situation, and then they wanted more certainty. And we were operating the sun sail business, and we had a couple of fixed return contracts, and we actually decided to review our position with the Ray fleet on the basis that boat owners were a lot happier just seeing a check going into their account rather than, you know, deliberating over boat owner statements on a monthly basis. So we think that it's a win-win for all parties concerned.
I can really see the simplicity of it, and you know, obviously, you know, the charter industry is seasonal. You know, you've got the off periods, you know, around January, February, March, or thereabouts. So I imagine, well, you know, from my experience, the income slows down in those months, and it's flat out over the, you know, the peak season, you know, August, September, October. So this just flat a lot of certainty and clarity for the owner.
Yeah, look, it's probably no secret. You know, the first 6 months of the year, I mean, some boats can go into a loss situation by virtue of the fact that it is also the opportune time for us to do a fair bit of maintenance, and that seems to be like we do the annuals, for instance, and obviously there's a considerable cost associated with that. And servicing, you know, there could be a 500-hour service or a 1,000-hour service. So that seems to impact, it does impact on the cash flow of the boat owner, whereas we take that pain away completely. That's at our risk, and we, of course, are going to do it when it's quiet, because it makes sense for us to do it, because we want to make sure our boats are in pristine condition, you know, for our charterers during the peak periods.
Now, I've got a question here from Pete Harrison regarding fixed price charters, you know, during you know, financial crisis. And before you comment on that, Sedron, just to give a little bit of context to you know, what happened during that period too. There were a number of new boats sold, sort of entering into it on various incentives the government had out there at the time. But a lot of the, certainly from where I'm standing, you can comment on this, Sedron, but a lot of the older boats became pretty expensive to be profitable during the tougher times. So they generally left the fleet, and the newer boats remained. So the boats that are in the fleets up there were new boats that entered, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, and now they're 7 or 8 years old. So the fleet still survived quite robustly. You know, there's still 130 or something boats that came out the other end, but they were new boats, you know, some time ago, and now they're older boats now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, look, it's probably, again, a symptom of the industry, and one would expect that, you know, after a boat's been around for 5 to 7 years, that you're coming up to some very major services, and you might even find that the motors are on the way out. You know, the canvas, the sails, the head sails, the main sail, anything that's running gear on the vessels, like the rigging itself, you know, 7 to 10 years is approaching to its end of life. And so what invariably happens is that your expenses become greater as the boat gets older. And consequently, we really should be putting up the price on the sale of the vessel as far as you know, charter rates are concerned, but unfortunately it's then competing against boats that are newer that are being placed in the fleet, and certainly in the competition as well. So consequently we have to you know, scale back, you know, the rates that we would have otherwise enjoyed with that vessel. So it's a bit of a not a conundrum, but it's just unfortunately a fact of life that, you know, the boats, the older they get, the returns start to diminish over time. And we found that usually 6 to 7 years or even 8 years, you have to look at a major refurbishment to bring the boat back up to scratch. And so depending on what sort of vessel it is, you could be spending anywhere between, you know, $30,000 to $50,000, because it may entail new engines and even involve rigging and so on. So So that needs to be factored in for the investor, that's looking at a boat.
Yeah, certainly we notice that boats that are approaching 10 years tend to have a little dip, I guess, in the resale. Partly because what you're saying, a lot of the expensive maintenance items start to come up, new rigging, potentially overhauling the motors, fit outs need refurbishing internally. But 5 years seems to be a real sweet spot to sell the boat before those expensive things creep into the boat. And I know that what you're committing to at the fixed returns is a 5 year period. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It's a fixed return for the full 5 years, so it's the same amount of money that you receive in your account every month.
Right. And regardless of if there is a substantial financial crisis or something going on, you're confident that would continue during that period?
We've been doing it for years, so it's not going to be a problem. I mean, even during the Cyclone Debbie, our fixed return boats were enjoying an income, whereas the variable contracts, they were waiting to be fixed up or attended to. So there was loss of income as far as the boat owners under the variable contract. So that's the beauty of the fixed return contracts. As I said, during Cyclone Debbie and even the most recent cyclone, irrespective of what might be taking place as far as the state of the nation is concerned, those boat owners are getting a return.
Interesting point. So yeah, in significant events like that, it's the people on the fixed that are significantly better off in many respects.
Yeah, I'm just having a bit of trouble hearing you, Brent, but yeah, I got the gist of that. Yeah, they are enjoying a return, whereas the variable contracts, they miss out.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, I guess, any other expected costs in relation to the use of the boat, what would the owner be expecting to pay if they take the boat out for a week or two?
The only cost that we would charge the boat owners would be a turnaround cost. That's really just to clean the vessel and do an inspection, and that's it. But the boat owners enjoy 60 days of access to their vessel for private use. We give 28 days in mid-season and 32 days in low season. For obvious reasons, we avoid making the boat available to the boat owner during peak season, because really that's our chance to, basically cover the expenses during low season. So we think that's a pretty good deal, and it's certainly more generous than what we offer under variable contracts. Well, the variable contracts are between 21 days and 30 days. Whereas under a fixed return contract, we offer the additional incentive with 60 days. And it depends also on the type of craft you got. If it's under 40 feet, we've got a charge of around $300. If you've got a boat that's 46 to 51 feet, we would charge obviously more because it's got additional cabins and additional heads. So that might go up to around $700.
Sure. And the personal use, so that's a fixed period of time that they're allowed to use it in the shoulder and off-peak periods. How much time can they have in one hit, I guess?
They can have it up to 7 days, 7 consecutive days. That's so they can make a block booking, if you like, for up to 7 days. I mean, look, we're flexible about it. That's in the terms of the agreement. But I've got boat owners that live in Mackay, for argument's sake, and they just give us a call and say, "Hey, look, I noticed the boat's not booked this weekend. Is it okay if I take it out?" We're flexible.
Right. So there's a bit of standby time that can be absorbed
Yeah.
as well if the owner can take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And flights these days from Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane are pretty good to Hamilton Island and Proserpine. I noticed my last trip up there, I booked a few days in advance, and I think it cost me about $130 each way through Hemo. So that's
Well, you've got
flight.
several choices. You can go either into Hamilton Island, of course, or you can go into Proserpine. And as you say, from those destinations, Melbourne's 3 hours, 2 hours from Sydney, and about an hour and a half from Brisbane. So I think the area is starting to be much better serviced than what it has been. Say 10 years ago, you've got Tiger as well as another alternative, cheaper airline. So there's different options. It's just a matter of jumping on the net and looking at what your options are.
And there are ferries that run directly from Hamilton Island to Shoot Harbour, sort of at the start and the end of the day. Is that right? Yeah,
that's right. There's two ferries that run first thing in the morning, and two ferries late in the evening that run to Shoot Harbour. I mean, that's really only a temporary situation because of at the moment your listeners here might not be aware, but there's only one island that's operating, and that's Hamilton Island. The other islands at the moment are still recovering from Cyclone Debbie. We know that landscape's definitely going to change when we see Lindeman and Daydream go back online. We'll see more ferries coming into the Shoot Harbour region. And I also mentioned that probably in the next 2 years we'll see the long-awaited Shoot Harbour Marina also taking off as well. Contracts are going to be let for that particular project later this year. So that'll give us another safe haven, very, very close proximity to where we operate. So I think there's a great future for Shoot Harbour because it is closer to the islands, and the cost of ferry tickets to Port of Airlie are quite outrageous at the moment. So there's going to be a bit of competition coming in the next 12 months, 2 years.
Right. But it'd be quite conceivable to fly up to Hamo, jump on a ferry that afternoon, and be on your boat, for the evening at Shoot Harbour.
Well, often that could be the arrangement, and but we offer the service where we take the vessel across to Hamilton Island, and we meet the charterers or the boat owner, depending who it is. And we'll do the briefing over at Hamilton Island and send them on the way from there. So that's a great facility or service, for those that just want to fly in. Within less than half an hour, they're on their boat, and they can be on their way. Within, depending on their experience, they can be on their way within an hour.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. So not only for the boat owners, but charterers can pick their boat up straight at the wharf at Hamilton Island, which is sort of on the back of the Sunsail base there, I assume, is it?
Yeah, that's right. That's where Sunsail is because we're of Trinity Marine's ownership. There's certain benefits of Whitsunday Yacht enjoy as a consequence of that. So it gives us as an operator easy access for both those fleets into Hamilton Island.
Okay. A couple of questions we got here from Peter. Can you change from a fixed price contract to a variable contract at any time, or do you have to wait until the contract is?
Look, it's all about certainty, I suppose, from both parties. We operate, I don't know. Well, actually, I suppose there's something we could consider. We've never had somebody that says, look, I've changed my mind halfway through the contract. But I suppose we can talk about it. We're flexible enough to talk about it, so we can talk about it. But I think once you got into a fixed return contract and the simplicity of the contract, and I mean, you've got to understand, it's in our best interest to make sure these boats are shipshape and up to service and up to scratch, because we've got essentially two clients that we're dealing with, or customers, if you like. We've got the boat owner on the one hand, and of course we've got our charterers. It's absolutely imperative for the sake of the brand and our name to make sure those boats are up to scratch. So I think once you get into the fixed return contract program, you'll find that is by far the best way to go.
And another question here, and why don't charter companies such as Yacht buy their own boats instead of taking on the investors?
Well, I mean, we've got a couple of boats. Trinity Marine do own a couple of boats, and it's mainly where we see that there is holes in the product that we're offering our customers, and some of the boat owners or potential investors, if you like, in boats haven't had an interest because they've got other reasons, motivation. They want to take it out of the fleet in the future. They don't really want to, invest in that style of boat. And, probably the larger or the vast majority of boat owners have that sort of agenda. So with a result, Trinity Marine has sort of filled the gaps in a couple of areas with our own boat ownership. But obviously, I mean, if we're investing in $1 million a boat sort of thing, or you can in the bigger boats, that becomes a sizable investment. I mean, our main concern is making sure our infrastructure is right. There's a massive investment in that, as far as the Trinity Marine's ownership of the facilities, and also there's been some restoration work as a consequence of the cyclones. I mean, everybody's been hit with that over there, and of course, if you're a landowner, you've got to take care of those issues as well. So I suppose if we had a bucket of money, just we definitely would be buying more boats ourselves, but we have limited resources, just like any business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I assume 20 boats worth between $500,000 to $1 million each. It's a pretty big capital outlay.
Yeah.
For any another question: can a fixed price contract work under a dual port scenario? So I think what Peter's referring to there is we have a number of boats that do a season over the summer period here in Sydney, and take advantage of the peak season here, and then Sundays for the winter periods.
Yeah, look, we've been involved with that and never really seen it work because of the cost of delivery, up and down the coast, and other things associated with that. But we're still receptive to that, and there's no reason why I can't do it. But you have to look at your costs pretty closely to be able to make sure that you are covered before you venture into that area. But it is conceivable to do that, yeah, for sure. And as I said, we've had experience in that area, but I haven't seen it really work for the boat owners that well. It may be because it didn't work as well down in Sydney. I mean, we can look after this end, and we know that we'll cover it up here. But as to what happened down in Sydney, maybe it didn't work for them. So if you've got the ability to be able to generate a decent income or a decent return, certainly that would be something worth looking at during the low season.
I guess it's in your fix that you're only offering a guaranteed return during your peak season too, whereas that takes a lot of the risk away over the off season. So it would probably be easier from your respect, but certainly there's a few more logistics in it. I mean, we do help package those programs. It's interesting, the Sydney market's very fragmented with lots of small operators, but there are one or two that are getting a bit more organised now, and I think that's probably the best way of partnering if someone to explore that. Do you see any other considerations around these fixed term contracts that are important that we haven't touched on?
Look, in sort of capsulating everything that's been said so far, we see it as, and I think the boat owners would see it, it's a more simplified approach to charter investment and ownership. under a variable contract, you get your monthly statement. It's basically an open book system, and every dollar that's spent on the boat, can come into question. And I mean, certainly that's the boat owner's right to do that. It becomes a little bit sensitive during the quieter months, but unfortunately, that's when we need to spend the money. And so we think the variable contract is not as conducive to the relationship as a fixed return contract, because we know that all the parties are going to be happy. They're getting their fixed return. It behoves us to make sure that that boat is best presented in the best possible fashion as far as charterers are concerned. Otherwise, charterers, certainly in this day and age, if they don't get their pound of flesh, they're looking for some sort of compensation. So you've got the checks and balances that are in that business model under a fixed return. You're getting a monthly return, irrespective of whether the vessel is working or not. So if it's stuck on a mooring, that's at our risk. You're still getting a return. We like to say that we've got a more lucrative owner's use privilege than we otherwise afford under a variable contract. We look after all the insurance, the turnaround costs, and the wear and tear on the vessel. So that's taken care of, so you don't have to worry about any of those major costs. We cover the charter negligence, and if you own a boat and it's in commercial registration, unfortunately that can occur. Of course, we've got our risk management of that side of the business, but nevertheless, some charterers do come to grief, and so with the result, we take care of that. You don't have to be involved with that. Of course, we let you know that an incident may have occurred, but as far as the costs associated with that, the downtime associated with that, you're still getting your monthly check. I mean, we had actually one of a monohull recently was a Beneteau monohull, and we found that there was structural cracks in the keel, and it turned out it was a warranty issue, despite the fact that the boat was about 6 or 7 years old. And Beneteau did come to the party and said yes, they recognised that was an issue. That boat sat on a hard stand, and under a variable contract, that boat owner didn't make a cent, for that. I think it was 4 to 5 months, because we had to wait for the keel to come from France. So under that variable contract, the boat owner made nothing, whereas under a variable contract, that boat owner is still being compensated. So
under a fixed contract.
Under a fixed contract. So, and then as far as the vessel phase out is concerned, when it does leave the fleet, it's phased out to charter standard on a contract completion basis, and of course that occurs with both variable and fixed return contracts, so there's no disadvantage there. So as far as simplicity is concerned, I suppose that's what I'm advocating. Really, it's a much better way to go. I mean, the variable contracts are 25 pages of contract legal jargon. The fixed return contracts are 5 pages. I think that speaks for itself. It's just a simpler contract, and much simpler to understand, because essentially, in many ways, you're hiring the boat to us, and it's up to us to maintain it to certain standards. And of course, you've got the right to have the inspections just as you would under a variable contract. So there's really no differences there. But we're taking the risk, and we're guaranteeing you a fixed return for a 5-year period. And some of these contracts we're actually extending anyway, because we've got the beauty of knowing these boats intimately. We've worked on them. We know, the idiosyncrasies of them, and we know how well they're working. And quite often we go to the boat owners and say, listen, it's been here 5 years, we're wanting to extend it another 2 or 3 years. So we don't automatically say ta-ta. We have a discussion with the boat owner. We might say, listen, you need to spend a little money just from a cosmetic point of view in this area, and we'd be happy to take it up, for another 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, so if we have a look at the boats, the ones that we're, proposing at the moment is the new Seawind 1260, a new boat optioned up, ready to go as a 3-cabin model, about 715 plus GST. There is an opportunity at the moment for a couple of reasons. We had one gentleman wanted to get his finances in order, so he's taken a later production slot, and another owner's decided to get larger motors in his boat, so he's taken a later production slot. Sorry, so we've got a couple of boats there that give about 20 grand worth of extras. So a free hyperlon dinghy and outboards, and a portable water maker for the personal use. It's about 20 grand's worth of extras, and the first of those actually a September delivery into Sydney or Brisbane. So that's a very short-term opportunity coming up, and that's what the 8% is being offered on. Is that right, Sedron?
Yeah, we're happy to offer a 8% return on the 3-cabin version, and we've got Seawinds in the fleet here, and the Seawinds always charter well, and that's what we're keen to see more come into the fleet. So we'd be keen to see that vessel in the fleet.
And that's 8% on the purchase value of the boat.
Yeah, it'd be 8%, of course, plus the GST. So when we make the payment, it'd be on a monthly basis. It'd be plus GST.
Yeah, and it's based on the purchase value of the boat is what the 8% is calculated.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. In the contract, we refer it to as the hull value. The hull value is either it depends if it's not a brand new one, it'd be on the insured value. And we get a valuation on that. That would be the basis for the return, or alternatively, it's on the purchase price.
Yeah. Okay. And just giving a little bit of context here too, with Seawinds, a long association with so many boats, have successfully gone through the fleet over the years, and we even, in fact, ran our Whitsunday rallies out of Yacht space there as our starting point for a number of years, which is a fantastic event back in the day. We'd love to see some new Seawinds bolster the fleet there again, and they've also done extremely well. So hope to see that again. And also the other opportunity, of course, is the power that's 44 is offered in a 4-cabin. And these boats are extremely successful as charter vessels, both overseas in the BVIs. There's a big fleet of them over there, and we're seeing them starting to populate in the Whitsundays too. So we do have availability for those for next winter, which is the peak season. So the 4-cabin, there is a 9% offering on 4 cabins for both models too, etc.
Yes, 9% is what we offer. 4-cabin version, whether there be Sunny Cats or power, it's the same sort of return.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the process of buying a boat, I guess there's 4 key considerations that we help package for boat owners coming into this. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an area of our specialty. So we quote up a boat to make sure that it's going to be charter ready for fleets such as Yacht. So we work closely with the fleet to make sure the equipment on the boat is what they need. And we also assure survey compliance. So we go to contracts with the boat optioned up for commercial survey. And that's part of our responsibility to post the boat through that compliance, which is a good thing to have the boat built to too for resale purposes. We are finding at the moment the boats in survey fetching a higher resale value than private boats, partly because there's just enormous demand from the charter industry around Australia at the moment. Obviously, the next key factor is placing it with a good fleet, and I think it's really the purpose of today's presentation is to really highlight this rare opportunity of the fixed returns. We haven't seen it for some time, and it is a really unique and I think highly beneficial program that gives a lot of clarity for boat owners, and Rennie Yacht have been in the industry there a long time, so definitely a good option to explore this. And I'm sure Sedron will be very happy to talk to anyone in more detail on a one-on-one basis. Often accountants that aren't experienced in the charter industry or the ins and outs of it, how to make a charter boat work best for you, often prematurely pull these things up. Certainly if they're not factoring in, what your lifestyle goals are as well. So we do have some accountants that we can recommend that are fully versed on charter boat ownership programs and can give you some good advice. So happy to refer anyone there. And also with regards to charter boat financing, we do have some good contacts in this department as well. And that's a whole nother topic, but I will send through a link here now. Hopefully everyone will get that, to an article that we've just posted about charter boat ownership financing options. So from remortgaging home loans to get long-term payment schedules to commercial leases that are more typical. So and there's some good contacts we can refer to there as well. So hopefully I've covered a lot of it there so far. Very happy to answer any other final questions right now. Otherwise, we will send out a replay of this presentation so you can review it. And of course, if anyone wants to get in touch directly with myself or Sedron or any of the contacts we mentioned, simply reply back to us, and we can help you out directly. So unless there's any other questions and any other parting words, Sedron, I think you've given us a good summary of the fixed returns. So I think we'll leave it there. And thanks, Sedron, for your time. And
thank you very much, Brent, for inviting me on. So it's been a pleasure.
Excellent. All right, thank you, and hopefully we'll be in touch. Bye.
Yep. Cheers.